All right. Um, yeah, I like the bio. I was reading over your issues and the concerns that you have over your policies, and
Right.
I'm liking what I'm seeing so far, especially when it comes to the Common Core, which is actually the first question that I had. I read up on some of your views on the Common Core issue, um, and was wondering what's the plan as far as what you're going to do about Common
If I'm
Core.
governor, okay. If I'm governor, obviously everything I do is going to go through the Wyoming Department of Education. But I'm not going to do it from over here. I'm going to work with the director and the staff to formulate a program. We're going to pull the federal money out of our schools first.
Okay.
Okay, when you do that, now the districts will panic. But rather than let the districts panic, I'm going to immediately match their funding so that there's no chaos.
Okay.
But things are going to change.
Good.
I want teachers to be able to teach. And let me just tell you, I'm not a teacher, and I know that. But I know a lot about being taught. And all the way through, even through med school, here and there's a teacher that will say, wait, Taylor, you need to work on this. Never mind what the class is doing, what the pace is, you need to work on these things. All the way through school, engineering everywhere. And that's what teachers need to be able to do. And in elementary school, there was times the teachers let 4 or 5 of us just work ahead in the textbook of whatever they were doing, and she could help other students
Right.
that needed help. There was 63 kids in my second grade class, 74 in my third grade class.
Wow.
And maybe the society was different. The teacher didn't have any problem controlling the class because those of us that could go ahead, she challenged us to see what we could get done correctly. And then she could work with kids who were coming along with a different developmental pace. And that's, they're not inferior, that their development at that age is just different.
Right.
And so the teacher needs to be able to deal with that. Not have them, by God, you got to get this stuff down. So they're memorizing from test to test to test, not learning the fundamentals of the material that they're memorizing.
Right.
That has to stop. If I can have my way, I would suspend all standardized testing for at least 2 years, maybe 4 years in the elementary grades. It just makes no sense because we've got the kids on the wrong pace, we've got the wrong focus, and the teachers are just in a way with a gun to their head. Everybody take a deep breath. Teachers, you need to teach. And yeah, I want to suggest curriculums, but I also want to bring back true vocational education, not lip service vocational education. And there's an area, information technology, both hardware and software, both code writing and how does this thing work? Why is it not booting up? That's not being addressed in a way that auto mechanics, carpentry, it should be addressed in the same way. The people that keep my IT running did not go to college. The people that keep the University of Wyoming's IT running, the actual boots on the ground, did not get that in college. Now, they've picked it up in the industry, they've gone to the Microsoft Engineering School or to the Apple School, but not to the university to learn those things. Sure, the vice president, yeah, he's got an engineering degree, but he's a manager. He's not the guy you call when your machine doesn't boot up, or it's smoking, or the data's messed up somehow. You call one of these kids, and sometimes they do it on the phone. Well, I want to foster that in our kids. Less than 600,000 people in our state. Every person here is important and a resource. It would be the same if there were millions in my heart, but practically speaking, we can't waste anybody. And we have the independence in our DNA to be whatever we want to be. So I'm not concerned about what the world test is, what other people are doing. I know what high standards are, and I know our teachers do. And I've had heart-to-heart with university professors because we have 20 to 25% of our college freshmen from Wyoming high schools cannot do freshman math, cannot do freshman language. They're not stupid. And the teachers in our K through 12 aren't bad. The system is wrong.
Right.
They're in the wrong system. So when you say Common Core, it's just that's one size fits all. And it's a found common pathway, an averaging system. So it's going to bring the top performance down. bring the bottom up a little because it's averaging, but you're going to bring the top performance down, and eventually the average drops, and you bring the top performance down some more. So that's why I'm against it. The idea that it's from somewhere else by itself doesn't put me off. It's what the idea is that puts me off.
Okay.
You see, so that's where I am on Common Core.
Okay. I know one of the issues that I have with it for the most part is the fact that I don't like someone telling me what you can't learn.
What you can't learn, and when you're a little kid, they're tracking you and putting this data in a data bank. Some kids are late bloomers.
Yes, they are.
What about that? And that's one of the true advantages in our particular society, is you can bloom at your own pace. I met a fellow from Sweden who was in that system where they test you, and he never got to go to high school because he didn't test well. They finally immigrated here. He's a contractor. He struggles with language and math, but he's not stupid. He's building his own foundation, but yet he's a very good contractor. So there's the example of that system doesn't work well for humanity.
Right.
Doesn't work well. And I think it sows the seeds of revolution.
It does.
Because those kids are going to be adults with adult wants, adult needs, and maybe not necessarily the right kind of skills to provide those, but they will provide them. They will satisfy their wants. Telling you what you can't learn, imagine that. We never heard of that when I was coming through prep school. I mean, they push you right to the edge. Push you right to the edge. Did you have geometry in high school?
I did.
You remember theorems and proofs?
I did.
Under Common Core, they're going to drop the proofs. So it's not geometry to start with. But even if a person doesn't have a scientific career where you use your math, life problem solving, here's a problem. You formulate an idea about what the cause is and what the solution might be. But then you prove for yourself that this really is going to work. That's lost.
Yep.
That's lost. And so that's my problem really with Common Core and with the way education was going. Standardized testing and comparing us to this group and to that group. When you compare us to Europe and Japan and China, they are testing their top 10%.
Yes, they are.
And we're comparing it against our aggregate. And we're going, geez, we're behind. No, we're not behind, guys. We're not behind.
We're just doing it different.
We're doing it different. So that's why I'm on education.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna open up my notepad here. So I can't remember my second one, but. All right. One of the other questions that I was asked was regarding if a martial law is declared.
And I'm the governor. We're assuming now I'm the governor.
Yes,
right?
we are assuming the government. We know that the National Guard now and organized militia fall under the command of the governor and move into enforcement role according to what the government would want. What are your views on enforcing things like the martial law?
Martial law is unconstitutional.
Okay.
Federal government has no authority, and I have no authority to invoke martial law as the governor. I do have the authority to quell violence. Okay. Quelling violence means you send the guard to the street, the block, the place where that's occurring. You don't lock down the state. You don't have authority to do that. Now, there's going to be some tension between us and the federal government. See, these aren't my views. These are what the Constitution dictates.
Right.
Okay, so I can't make up as I go. Never mind my education, it's not about that. It's about what's the Constitution say. That's how you formulate your plan. Now, martial law, okay, curfews, nobody on the streets between these hours. You can only travel on nonsense. You can't do that. Now, I'm going to be the kind of governor that's not going to sit and wait for that to happen. I'm going to be out with my people in every county having town hall meetings about what we need to do to improve our state. So my relationship with the public will be different than any governor since I've been in Wyoming. And I don't know what other governors have done in other states. I've lived in Tennessee, Louisiana, Wyoming. So but I never saw that. The governor was some distant figure. You could go and see him. Well, I need to be out there because I'm making changes under the Constitution that people haven't seen. So they need to be able to get in my face and talk to me. But then when there is unrest, my plan is for the county sheriff, his posse, to call up the help they need within the county.
Okay.
If it's too big for the county, I want the surrounding counties to be called in next. See, these people know each other.
Right.
And there's friends and neighbors there, there's relatives. You got a better chance of calming things down without undue violence when it's friends, neighbors, and relatives. And hey, wait a minute, you're out of line here. Let's figure out what the problem is here. Rather than nameless, faceless people from the other side of the state showing up. In Wyoming, we all know each other almost anyway. But that's my plan for it. And I'll tell you how I got there. The town of Wright, north of here, had a tornado knocked them flat. Small town.
Okay.
Friedenthal was the governor there, and he called up to see what they needed. They said nothing. Stay in Cheyenne. Between the ranchers, farmers, and the mines, they had enough equipment to clean up the damage. And the community pulled together for food, clothing, and shelter for everybody until they could get on their feet with insurance. That's what I want my communities to be. So I want all of the emergency services to be county-centered. And I want the state to coordinate that, and some of the heavy lifting as far as equipment, resources, will come from the state. But I want the county sheriff to call that in. If you need me, the sheriff, whoever, maybe the president of the county commission, we need the governor to come and see this. Then they call me. I don't show up with TV to have my face in the middle of it. You see what I mean?
Right.
Because now you're distracting people from getting out of trouble.
Yep.
If they call me, I'm going, I need to see it. Yeah, all right, I'm on the way. And so they showed me what I needed to know, because it's obviously something that we hadn't planned for. And then we, me and the county people, figure out what we're going to do about it. And we do that. So now, when it comes to militia, state militia has to be impaneled by the legislature.
Right.
Terrifies people when you say militia. And I understand it terrifies these people because Wyoming has been the most peaceful, easygoing place. You know what I'm talking about. You've seen combat. You see what I'm saying? You've seen people who really just want to kill you. You know, it's not about, and with some of these folks, it's that you are different and you are there in their country and I want to kill you. Street gang mentality is the same thing, and I grew up with that, and I've been shot at because I had a Catholic school uniform on. And so when you talk about irrational behavior, then rational people have to be prepared in an organized way to deal with that.
Yes, sir.
So I have got to educate our people as to what a militia is, and then I'll have our people have their legislature empower militia. And the militia, that's how I get back to my counties, in the center of control in every emergency. You see what I mean?
Right.
So that we're not marshaling 1,500 troops from Cheyenne Guard to fly up to Cody. Cody community is calling together their people to handle whatever the situation is. And then they'll fill me in on what I need to know and what they need the state to do. And that way we've got a plan and we've got a backup. We've got all the backup we need. So that's my approach to that. But before, when I campaigned, if I said militia, I mean, they're ready to run for the exits, get the net. This guy's crazy. They don't understand who that is and how it functions.
Militia has built a very bad rap over the years from people that don't understand what they were supposed to be, or using them improperly.
Right,
and
right.
Even one happened in Wyoming, I believe, in Casper area.
Yeah.
And it's something that needs to be brought back, but people need to understand what they actually are, what they were meant to be in the first place.
That's right. And see, I have to be out there with them and have them understanding that. And so before I can get there, I got to educate the sheriffs. So in transition, the first big event will be a Constitution class for the sheriffs. Richard Mack will be involved, and probably one other Constitution scholar. I can't teach it because you can't be a prophet in your own home ground. I will take it along with everybody else, because they need to know the authority they have as sheriff, but they need to know the responsibility and the culpability that goes along with that authority. You take the oath, you have certain things you're obligated to do.
Yes, sir.
And if you don't do those things, then I'm obligated to prosecute you. But see, there's a shoe for each foot. If I don't do those things, I should be prosecuted, and I can be prosecuted under the USA Title 18 statute. So It's not. I'm not making anything up. But the sheriffs don't know.
Right.
They don't know. And so I've restrained myself from throwing rocks at them. It's frustrating that they don't know. From throwing rocks at them. But see, now is the time for people to become educated. We've gone too far down the wrong road. And the Constitution's the only salvation for what's wrong. That's the only salvation. You fix that, the business people will fix the economy. My job is not to fix the economy. My job is to enforce the Constitution.
Time will work itself out.
Yeah, it will. Oh, it will. It will. When they ask me how many jobs you're going to create, I said, hopefully none. Because when the governor creates jobs, that's a tax burden. When private enterprise creates jobs, that's a boon to the community. So the governor's going to refrain from creating jobs beyond what we need in my staff. A little bit of a hiring freeze at the state until I see what my troops are, which is the state employees.
Right.
Some of them will have to retrain. Some of them will get the opportunity to do different things before I lay anybody off. And you know, there are people with families and they live in your communities and they have jobs. So I want them to be secure in that. But I want them to understand your job may change. So yeah, your life's changing a little bit, but it's for the betterment of the state. And so that's where I'm going with that whole thing. So it's not isolated. You got to pull this together.
Right. I know another issue that had came up, because I've been talking with a couple of friends the last couple of days about issues around the state that they had. One of which was a member of law enforcement. I'm not going to specify a specific branch.
That's okay.
Discussing with that individual, they said that noticed a problem where there's inconsistencies within the pay scales of state employees. Two people can be the same position, same rank, same duties, making completely different wages, like gaps of $300-400.
That should be easy to fix.
It should be. He's concerned though that I guess they brought in a group called the Haynes group that did a big what's the word I'm looking for? Basically analysis.
Analysis or yeah.
And they ended up changing a lot of the pay scales, and a lot of it affected people retroactively and changed pay scales for some people. Some were inconsistent along the board. And then another issue that came up was that there hasn't been a pay raise for state employees since 2009.
I know about no pay raise. I hadn't heard about this haste.
Okay.
I hadn't heard about that. I have to take a deep breath there. Doesn't make any sense. It's a big company. Wyoming is, the government is. I understand that. But you see, what you're telling me is I have nobody in my employ as governor who can look at our personnel system and tell me that our pay scales are fair and everybody's treated. I mean, come on.
Exactly.
It's just data. I mean, it's just data, right?
Right.
It's just who are on these levels, how long have they been there, and what's the pay scales on that level? How come these two are different? Obviously, we can do that. And I am a little, I'll say, skeptical whenever you get this outside expert to do something. I mean, sometimes you do need the expertise. I'm a consultant. I use lots of consultants, but that kind of thing where we're just talking about our own data,
Yep.
we ought to be able to get at that. See, that's something the governor can fix because it's in administration. It's in my branch. Pay raises for state employees. We don't have a formula, or as far as I can tell, or a system for funding anything. It's all by fiat when the legislature meets.
Right.
I want to get away from that. The state, counties, cities, and towns have road and bridge, equipment, personnel expenses, both health care, retirement, pension. None of that is new science.
Right.
And again, that's just data. And we have income and we have earnings on our savings. So why don't we have a formula that's transparent? Everybody can see. Here's what the state's bringing in on earnings, taxes, etc., etc. Here's what our costs are to do business. Your employees are usually the biggest part of running any company, and that's fine. So why don't we have a formula that says Here's how the raises are determined. Sure, I do believe in merit pay, but those are bonuses.
Right.
Merit pay is bonus. Here's how we keep our salary structure stable. Here's how we give pay raises. Here's how we return monies to our counties, cities, and towns, and everybody can look at the state revenue picture transparently and know, well, this year looks like we'll be in line for X amount of increase. Or if the state picture is terrible, they can see that. We probably won't get a raise this year because the state is either underwater or not breaking even. Why can't that be transparent?
And if
Again,
I'm
it's
correct,
data.
right? And if I'm correct, hasn't Wyoming been in the black for a couple of years?
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
So
Since I've been here.
So what he was concerned with was inflation. Of course, is always an issue, just with our awesome economy around the country. So that's something we can't avoid. And even though inflation has been going up since 2009, pay raises haven't. People are still sitting at the same exact pay amount when they're paying more money for stuff.
That's politics.
It is.
That's politics. See, the private sector's suffering. So politically, you don't want to give public employees a raise. Why is the private sector suffering? Because politicians aren't doing what they should. Now, we can't control what the feds do, and we've really crept into big-time fascism. But what we can do, see, as governor, I'm going to facilitate our natural resource base, and I'm going to improve our regulatory climate, and I'll give you an example of what I mean in a minute. By doing that, you improve the private sector, and they are getting pay raises, and they are making money, and things are going up, both locally, and there are things I can do out in the Republic, working with other governors, and sometimes even the mayors of very large metropolitan areas, and county commissioners of very large metropolitan areas, who are our energy consumers, working with my producers to produce energy in a cheaper fashion, and working with the marketplace to buy that energy. Then manufacturing can go back into those places because it's cost effective. So those things then improve everybody's economy. And yeah, we're going to sell coal to China or Japan or whoever wants to buy it. But the governor's got to get on the ground and facilitate the transport of that through the other states. So you got to make it worth their while to have that go through their state. That's just business, and you can do that. So those are the things you do. Then, this is a regulatory example I'm talking about. I have a rancher friend in northern Wyoming. He's a small rancher like me, but he has gravel on his ranch. Not a huge amount, so he could be a highway paving contractor, but he can sell it for driveways, flower beds, and ornamental stuff. And right to left. Yeah. The EPA and our DEQ shut him down because he didn't have a porta potty on the ranch out at the gravel pit. Now he doesn't have employees. It's just him.
Do you guys want to order some breakfast?
Let me look at it real quick and see what we got. It's actually the first time I've eaten here, so.
We just got a new menu at the beginning of the year, so there's all kinds of good new stuff on there.
Oh.
And you wanted the variola, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That comes with an English muffin. No bread.
I wouldn't mind doing some French toast.
Okay, do you want any bacon, ham, or sausage? Any eggs?
Yeah, eggs, hard.
Over hard?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you need bacon, ham, or sausage?
Bacon, please.
Alrighty. Get out of the way, thank you.
So, see, yeah, I'm a politician because I'm running for governor. But if you go back to the founders, they were politicians because they had to get rid of England. They had to be in the Continental Congress. They were citizens with businesses and families and lives which they were dying to get back to. That's the boat I'm in. We don't turn this around. My ranching and my doing business is going to suck because the feds are going to just continue to increase taxes, increase regulations till we live in a police state. So how do you fix that? Enforce the Constitution. So those regulations, this poor guy has no employees. Why does he need a porta potty? It's a cattle ranch. The cows don't have one.
Yeah.
The deer, the antelope, and the elk don't have one. So what are we doing here for? Well, it's just in the book. It's the rule. You gotta have a porta potty.
I mean, I understand as having it as a convenience,
Sure.
but a requirement.
Or if you have one employee, different world. You gotta provide that for the
Right.
workspace. Not a problem. Not a problem. Understood. Understood. Although cowboys don't ever think they need one, and so it's where's the common sense in that?
Yeah.
And I know a large operator who spent well over $500,000 now trying to permit a gravel pit in the Red Desert, and he just can't get it done. And you know, you just dig the rocks out of the ground. I mean, they're just there, just as what probably used to be a riverbed or something millions of years ago. Now it's just gravel, and so those kinds of regulations need to be tightened up so that people can do business. And sometimes they're going to spill, they're going to make a mess. You want the bonding proper up front so the cleanup is covered. And that's the job the governors haven't done. They kind of wink and nod and look the other way. You know, after mass for the state to clean up. Well, I'm not going to do that. See, that's where I have some rub with the real big money in the state. They know that I'm not going to do that. So they realize, well, God, we can operate better if Haynes is governor, but he's going to make us clean up after ourselves. And they don't know what to think about that. But I can't cut it both ways. Either you're all straight,
Right.
or you're not straight at all. See, if you don't enforce all the rules, you're crooked. Well, I'll enforce this one, but not that one. No, that's crooked. You enforce all the rules, and if the rules are bad, then out in the open and transparently, you change the rules till they make sense. But if we don't have rules, we don't have order.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. You already covered my constitutional militia for the most part. Let's see. Now, federal agencies' enforcement of unconstitutional laws in Wyoming. For
Done.
example, gun control.
Done.
This one.
Done. Over.
Okay. What is the response going to be to that, and how is it going to be
You mean
handled?
from the feds?
Well, if they do attempt to come into Wyoming or whatever, how are we going to handle this?
Well, if they try and enforce any unconstitutional law, or if they try and enforce any law, well, it would be unconstitutional if it's not an authority they have under Article 1, Section 8. Then you're arrested, either for impersonating a law officer, perhaps assault and battery, or perhaps felony assault and battery and impersonating a law officer. Whatever the offense is, we're not going to tolerate it at all. To the point, Forest Service now has law enforcement painted on their pickup. You come out on the highway with that on your pickup, we're going to arrest you.
Impersonating an officer.
That's right. So we're going to take that seriously. These guys running around with federal police on there, done. They won't believe it until it happens, but it will happen.
Okay.
Yeah. Harder thing is to untwine ourselves from Homeland Security. So I want to do that, but it's really a snake, and so I'm gonna have to take it out of our hair piece by piece. But I plan to do that. I plan for Wyoming just to be a constitutionally run state, so that anybody can look at what I'm doing, walk in the office over and say, "What are you doing? That's not in here."
We have some flavored coffees.
See what I mean?
An Irish
Right.
coffee, a hazelnut.
That's your job description. Those are your marching orders if you're an elected official and you take the oath. That's all you got to worry about is what does the Constitution say about that. But the governor has to be engaged with the legislature year-round when they're in their interim committees and when they're proposing legislation. And so you go and you say, make it clear to me what you want to accomplish. Okay, let's find a way to do that under the Constitution. If we can't, you can't do it.
Another concern that was brought up was regarding a recall clause. Wyoming doesn't
We need a
have
recall statute.
statute. That's
We need
right.
a recall statute. Not everybody understands that. So I'm going to campaign on 3 big things and maybe 4. I'm going to campaign on reforming education, reducing federal involvement in our society to its constitutionally mandated level, and improving our regulatory climate And in that, it's also improving our economy with our natural resource base. Now, when I'm in transition, realizing that we really need a way to have government by the people.
Right.
You can't have government by the people without recalls.
Exactly.
I can't run my businesses if I can't hire and fire people. And so when you talk about recall, people don't understand it. Every time somebody asks a question at a campaign stop, then I deal with it. I says, we need to have somebody bring that bill. And in transition, I know I can get somebody to write that bill. And give it some publicity so that people understand it and they're behind it and they'll have to pass it.
It's just like in Colorado, they understand their recall clause and they've used it two
I
times
love
now.
that. I love
three.
Isn't that amazing?
And one of them, one of the issues that we have with the recall clause in Wyoming or in Colorado, I'm sorry, that I was going to bring up for Wyoming is the fact that once the recall is initiated, a senator or an elected official can no longer resign their position until that recall is terminated.
Right.
For example, Hudak down in Colorado was in the middle of getting recalled. The recall got the votes to pull her out, so she resigned. So that is defeating the purpose of the entire recall.
If they resign, they can do that. However, the recall process needs to be completed.
Right.
And then the penalty for being recalled, we need to figure out what that is. More, if we recall you for criminal activity, then you should be barred from holding public office forever.
Right.
We recall you, and they need to understand that subverting the Constitution is sedition, and that's a form of treason. That's a form of treason. You should not be able to hold public office again. And so that's the part you've got to educate the people on, and it has to be in there. So that once that recall statute is written and you have those provisions, people running for office understand now they are accountable.
Right.
More than at the election cycle.
Well, part of the issue that I'm more concerned with as well is that once the person resigns that position, that is no longer an electable position, it's an appointed position. For like with Hudak, when she resigned her position, she was able to appoint someone to fill her shoes.
Right.
And it takes the power out of the people's hands because now she's put someone else in there that she supports.
That's right.
So once that recall is initiated, they shouldn't be allowed to.
No, it can be vacant. Every public office can be vacant, including governor.
Correct.
Because you see, you guys are going to go to work, whether there's a governor sitting over there or not, right? The society is going to run, especially in this short period. We can have a special election. We can't appoint a governor.
Right.
We need a special election. They'd like to appoint the governor.
Right.
That's Alexander Hamilton wanted the president to serve for life, appoint the governors and senators, and they serve for life. Thank God it didn't happen.
Yep.
Thank God it didn't.
I also believe in the term limits for congressmen and senators.
Term limits I've thought about it constitutionally. We've lost it constitutionally every time we tried it, but we have term limits for every elected office.
Except for.
That's as if we did. Then we could win that.
Right.
See, the reason we lose it is because of the 14th Amendment. It's not equal protection under the law. I'm saying you can serve all you want, but you can't. We have it for governors and presidents. We should have it for every elected office. And I think one of the things I would change is I would elect all the judges, including the Supreme Court. And I would like something in every state, like the Federal Register, I'd publish all of their decisions. And make some noise about it so people actually read that in the paper. The public is detached from what goes on right across the street here in the federal building. I've been to federal court with friends who were being run over by the BLM and the federal judge, who thought he was my friend, found out he wasn't. And I believe in the Constitution, and if I win, he's going to have a problem. He's going to have a problem. The federal government is going to be respected in this state. under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, period. Anything beyond that, and you'll be prosecuted or sanctioned. And I don't see that that's hard to do.
Doesn't seem like it to me.
I've faced the federal government down in ranching by myself, and you didn't read about it in the paper. They just went quietly because they didn't have anything they could do other than go quietly. If I can do that as a rancher, what can the governor do? The governor can straighten this mess out.
Okay. Now, as far as our mineral industries, the oil, coal, what is the plan to keep them producing?
Well, one of the things you do is go back to what I said about regulations and about federal intrusion. Reasonable regulations to public health and safety, and environment is included in public health and safety. We have a DEQ, and I have scientific background to understand what's going on out on the ground. But there's a lot of room for them to operate.
All right, here, guys.
There is a lot of room for them to operate.
Can I get you guys anything else?
Not me, I'm in great shape, thank you.
All right, enjoy.
So what I will do is allow them to do their thing and clean up after themselves, and then work with other states to buy the power and our minerals to be sure that we can get the materials out of here. And there's several things involved in that, and I think that's what the governor should be doing. And not selling coal. They don't even sell coal. They know what they're doing. They know how to mine coal. I need to be sure they can do it and sell it. I want to build power plants in Wyoming and ship the power out. Let's bless the food. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day, and thank you for Corey, and I thank him for his service to our nation. I ask you to bless him and his family, and I ask you to bless this food and my endeavors. These petitions I humbly bring in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. So you see, what I see industry tiptoeing around all of these regulations, and a lot of them are just to control us. And now that, and see, when I really went to war with the feds way back in the late 80s over ranching issues, I could see that they weren't interested in the environment. There's a group of people like at EPA, Fish and Wildlife Service, BLM, who really just want all private enterprise off the land. They want to take over the land, and they want it to be a park. But we can't live that way. We can't live that way. We can't just be a park. And the proof of that is the mountain pine beetle devastation, and now the spruce beetle is taken off. If you don't manage your forest, your trees become old and senile, and they are unable to defend themselves against those bugs. Like a healthy young tree, a pine beetle bores into the bark, but a healthy young tree will put out a blast of sap, and the beetle is washed out and the bugs eat the beetle. That's how they protect themselves. When they get older, they can't do that. So you need to constantly manage your forests.
Okay. Another issue brought up was regarding national parks. There are service roads that go through the parks and areas of the parks that are being limited now for various reasons. The roads are getting torn up or whatever the case is. And so people are limiting, I guess, access to certain areas of the parks from people getting to them. What would we be able to do as far as trying to avoid limiting access to our national parks?
Well, see, I'm stuck there because the national parks are unconstitutional.
Agreed.
So those are going to become state parks. And access will be very different. Not only expecting, but I need people to have access to most of the park in one way or another, because we need to manage the timber and the wildlife in the park to keep it healthy. So that's a whole different mindset and paradigm, isn't it?
It is.
That's a big paradigm shift for people. But I'm stuck if I'm going to enforce the Constitution. I can't enforce it and say, well, we'll let the feds keep it. No. I can't do that.
Right.
Is everything all right, guys?
Good.
Let's see. I've kind of gathered from the conversation so far that you're not exactly fond of DHS, EPA, NSA, things of that nature.
No, and I have no idea how many quote terrorist attacks they prevented. My idea about making the people safe is making the people responsible for their safety on the local level. This whole see something, say something sounds good, but also sounds like a police state to me. I'm spying on my neighbor. I need to be ready to protect Taylor, and I'm not a tough guy. But if I'm ready to protect myself and that all my neighbors are, that ante is raised for somebody wanting to do anything. And so I think that's where I'm going with that. We used to have what's called civil defense when I was a kid.
Right.
And they taught that. They taught neighborhood security. I want to go back to that.
What about the NDAA? What are our views on that one?
If Section 1021, 1022 would be kidnapping in Wyoming. I tried to get that passed last time, which pointed out how ignorant our legislators are, and I don't mean that as a snob. Boone and myself were testifying, and the chairman of the committee looks at me and he says, Dr. Haynes, if we do these things you want us to do, how then will the federal government rule over us? I took a deep breath and I says, well, the country was set up so that the federal government is an employee. It is there to do a few specific things, not to rule over us.
It's the first nine articles in the Bill of Rights for the government to mandate the country. The 10th Amendment makes everything else that's not listed in the first nine the state's responsibility.
That's right.
So, and like I like to tell people, they have executively ordered and amended their way out of that whole mess and around the Constitution.
So the Congress that has allowed that without bringing impeachment is also culpable, in my view.
They are. There's only a select few that have stood up against it, and one of them was not our esteemed Mr. Enzi.
Oh, really? I'm sorry.
Mr. Enzi voted yay.
Yeah, so did Mr. Barrasso.
So I'm not real fond of their involvement. I believe so did Congresswoman Loomis.
She voted both ways.
Oh, that's right, because she was coming up for election.
Yes, both ways.
So yeah, I'm firmly against that one. Let's see, there was another issue that had come up while I was talking. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head. If I remember it, I'll bring it up with you. So, I guess my last official question is pretty much what makes you the best candidate for governor? What makes you what the state needs?
Good question. And it's interesting, and I've had to ask myself that. I am, as far as I've observed, I have the most experience in the private enterprise system and business. I'm part of the fabric of America. I come off a produce farm in Louisiana. My mom had an 8th grade education, my dad an 11th grade education, and they are my heroes. They are my heroes. And so I've been everything from a waiter to a teamster to a stevedore, truck driver. I still have my CDL to pay for my education. So understand what the person out there making a living is dealing with. And I understand what the person trying to have a payroll, have employees. I know what they're dealing with. And I am a firm believer in the Constitution, but I'm also a constitutional scholar. In that not only do I study the Constitution, I look for Supreme Court decisions, Constitutional case law that tell me when I'm on solid ground, when I'm not. I'm not aware that any governor since I've been in Wyoming has done that. Even the one I liked, Governor Garrett, I really liked him. And these other two candidates that really Meade's going to run. Meade told somebody he's never read the 10th Amendment. And Miss Lummis is great. Miss Hill, best superintendent of public instruction that I've seen, the only one I've ever seen stand up, which I think is her strength. But her background is in education, so she doesn't have any business background.
Right.
So what, Taylor? At that level, senior executive level, the senior most executive in the state, you got a lot of highly educated, smart, motivated people working for you. You really don't supervise those folks. You lead them. And you have to lead them with a vision. And you've got to have enough expertise to deal with their egos properly, not with a club, because it doesn't work.
I know a lot of people in the state don't have a problem with Matt Meade for the most part. I mean, and honestly, looking back at his policy, I've seen a couple of issues here and there, but nothing that's like, holy cow, as such as Indy and Barrasso have. And a lot of people in Wyoming are going to say, well, we've got something decent going, why would we change that?
See, we don't have something decent going. He's done a terrible job. He's allowed the federal government to do whatever they want. He allowed the EPA, they're shutting down our coal industry. And when they came up with this, cooked up this deal with the reservation, it's a trial balloon to see what his reaction is. And so, by not being a constitutionally based government, and by not having to ever have had to make a business work, make a payroll, or just get a paycheck. And I'm not knocking him, because now this is a nice man. If you're going to ask me about a personality, Matt Meade, I don't have anything against him. No, he's a good guy. He's in the wrong job. You need to have declared the wolf a predator. It's a large animal predator. And my citizens can protect themselves and their property anywhere, anytime, just as if it was a coyote. Okay? EPA has no authority here. Fish and Wildlife Service has no authority here. We've got our own game and fish. We've got our own DEQ. We'll clean up our own nest. See, he won't do that. He wants to know what the feds want, and then he goes along. EPA kind of embarrassed him. He said, well, I'll sue him. We're not going along with that. What the governor needs to do, because we have that reservation, you got to meet with the leadership. You got to treat them with respect. But then you have to have them understand the advantages of working with Wyoming.
Right.
You don't want to be surrounded by us and work against us.
True.
We want to work with you. We've got things you need. You've got things we need. And we need to see that all our people are taking care of us working together. And I feel responsibility for both. But I am hired to protect Wyoming. He hasn't done that either.
He hasn't.
No. And so when you do nothing, you don't make people angry because they don't know what you're letting happen to them because you're doing nothing.
Well, that took care of most of my questions I had here. Now, I know you mentioned Boone. I don't know if he's really told you how we're acquainted or whatnot. He's the president of the Oath Keepers up in Wyoming. I am the Southeast Wyoming Regional Director. So I'm over the 8 counties down in the Southeast, Natrona, all the counties down in the Southeast corner. I am working to get basically the Oath Keepers on their feet around this area. Turning out to be a lot harder than it seemed at first, just because people are uneducated. They hear the Oath Keepers, they hear militia, which we're not a militia, but they hear these things and instantly think that they're going to get in trouble, or they're going to get arrested, or that we're illegal. And so I'm trying to break that mindset and get through to people that the Oath Keepers are good. All we're asking is that people who take an oath to the Constitution uphold that oath.
That's right.
And I mean, everyone's liable to it. The president himself is an oath keeper, or should be an oath keeper. This one's an oath breaker. Oh, he is. But Governor of Wyoming is an oath keeper, or should be an oath keeper. Everyone who takes that oath should be involved as an oath keeper. And as an organization, we technically shouldn't even exist. But because of the fact that people are ignoring their oaths, they're not paying attention. Sheriffs are not paying attention. Police officers, military, National Guard. A lot of them don't even know what their oath means. For example, when I joined the military back in 2003, um, I was fresh out of high school, 17 years old when I was going through the process. And 2 days of getting poked and prodded and asked questions and stripped down to my underwear and checked out and just exhausted me. So when it came to the end of that second day, I raised my right hand to take that oath. I'm just repeating after the dude standing in the front of the room.
That's right.
Not paying any attention to what I'm saying. I was trying to go home.
That's right.
It wasn't until I re-enlisted back in 2008 that I suddenly realized what the oath, what it actually said, and what it meant. And I sat down and I educated myself on it, broke it down into piece by piece. What is this telling me? What am I saying that I'm going to do? And how does it apply to my day-to-day job? And then I took that oath and applied it to the Constitution. And since then, it's been a whole different game for me.
Doing all right, guys?
I'm great. Um, and my job is trying to educate. Now, a lot of National Guard don't realize that their authority does not fall under the federal government.
I know.
They are not controlled by the government. They don't know that. They think that the president issues them their orders. He doesn't. He only issues them their orders in the case of a national emergency, when under the authority of the government.
That's right.
So, and I was actually speaking with the National Guard about this a while back, a member, and he's like, I didn't know this. I thought that I was part of the federal military. I had to explain to him, no, you're a part of the organized militia of the state of Wyoming.
That's right.
And he suddenly had a whole different mindset about what his job was in National Guard. I want to get more of that going within the state. Get the sheriffs to understand what their role is within the state. Danny Glick, I have not really had a chance to feel him out.
Joke.
I've
Not a
heard,
joke. Terrible.
I've heard mixed reviews as far as
Terrible. Terrible.
That's the most credible source so far that said he's terrible.
Terrible. Not, and again, I have no knock on the personality.
Right. We're not talking personal at all. We're talking strictly business here.
His business, his
Constitution.
administration is strictly unconstitutional.
Okay.
And one of the things all the sheriffs have done, and Danny's done it because I live in this part of the state, is sign these MOUs with the feds so the FBI and the BATF can run around. Well, that's going away. And I'll tell you what I suspect. And I need groups like yours with military experience. And if you got guys that understand ordnance and intelligence, when I really draw the line between us and the feds, I don't put it past them to perpetrate some horrendous act through a surrogate, a useful idiot. And I need people watching for that, because I don't want that useful idiot taken out.
Exactly.
I want that useful idiot very comfortable answering questions. And I don't want law enforcement to do that.
Right.
I didn't take an oath. I don't have to Mirandize it. I can interrogate that son of a bitch and find out what I need to know to protect my people, where it came from. See what I mean? And so that's not for public consumption, but I expect that to happen. And I expect they know that. By the way, they're not done doing their job. They're done running over. They're going to get court order for everything they do in the state. And so that's kind of frustrating. Yeah. They're going to say, well, God, we're not protecting you. Actually, for the first time, guys, you are protecting my constitutional rights to be free.
Well, I don't know if Boone has talked to you about the civilization preservation teams that the Oath Keepers have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be trying to get those on their feet here in Cheyenne once I can get the support for it, get the manpower. I'm not supposed to be a manager of this, like the city itself. I'm just living here. I'm supposed to be a manager of just the 8 counties. I'm supposed to have individual people in each county with me that I lead, and then they lead their counties as they see fit. Just getting the support for it is causing a little bit of trouble.
Oh, sure.
But it's starting to grow. It's getting there.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. The the Sons of Liberty in Weston County, and I think there's an oath keeper up there. They may be able to give you some help with some names, but ex-military, young people that have been in the service that see the light, that's your key. That's your key. And you see, we're not talking about taking over anything. We're talking about protecting what we have.
Protecting the Constitution and protecting our state.
That's right. That's going to be important because some people expect Obama to try and stay in office. I don't. Because the paradigm against that is too strong.
Right.
And he's not that popular anymore. The paradigm against that's too strong. But, you know, just like they picked him before we ever knew who he was and put him in that spot, they've got another one.
They do.
And another one, and another one.
They got Hillary Clinton sitting on the back burner. They've got Chris Christie they're trying to bring in. And
but he's a Republican.
they don't care. That don't mean nothing anymore.
They're drinking out of the same water fountain, don't they?
Yep.
George Bush, both of them.
I don't go by Republican or Democrat anymore. I've lost that terminology. I go by libertarian and politician. Libertarian to me is someone that's actually going to defend the Constitution, understands it, knows it, and will defend it.
Right.
A politician is someone who's going to do what he has to do to take power.
Take power, to retain power.
Yep.
Not for the good of the people.
But for the good of themselves and for what they want.
That's right. And we are there. We've been there a while, but I think it's just to the point now people see it.
And I've been trying to explain to people, it's not Obama that's the problem. Yes, he has a lot of issues. Yes, he's a clown. But he is not the problem in our country right now. And I'm going to put the root cause of our problem at the voting system, personally. The lack of ability to identify people to make sure that they haven't voted more than once.
Okay, I want that in Wyoming. I want voter ID.
Okay.
And I want a combination electronic identification system so that when I walk in, pop down my voter registration card, I'm verified as a registered voter, and it goes into the system that I'm at polling place XYZ, and I'm about to vote. And when I leave, bingo, it clicks, I voted, right? I voted. Then I want a paper type ballot.
Is your guys' ticket going to be all together today?
Yes, I got it.
Just leave that there.
I
I'll
want
take care of it up front.
a paper ballot, but I want a carbon type system so that you fill out your ballot and you'll put the cardboard in the machine and it counts the vote, but you take your copy home.
Right.
And if there's some huge discrepancy, the people can bring out their copies. And there can be a watermark type copy so that it can't be counterfeited. I want to go to that.
I know a lot of people, one of their issues or concerns is that if we do a computerized system for voter identification or voter confirmation, I guess, that it's going to record who they voted for and it's going to remember that. In my opinion, I don't think that should happen. I don't think it should be recorded under any circumstances.
It comes in.
As
It's not recorded when you vote. It comes in that all it says you were at this precinct and you voted.
All right.
And that's done, you know how you register at the table? It's done there.
Right.
It's not done when you go to the machine.
Okay.
And that's because you want secret ballot.
Right. Yeah, you don't want people. I don't want my name associated with the person that I voted for. But you need to be held accountable for the fact that you did vote. You can't vote again, and you need to be someone there to look at your picture ID and say, okay, you are the person that you say you are.
Right.
I don't care who you vote for. Go into the booth and vote for whoever you're going to vote for. Come back out.
Right.
But you are a U.S. citizen and you voted. That's all I care about.
And that's easy to do.
It is,
Oh,
but
God,
the nation can't figure that out apparently.
Well, you know what amazes me? What just amazes me? I haven't figured out yet. Like I told you, my parents were very average Americans. They never worried about voter fraud because it was all paper ballot.
Yeah.
And so you're telling, and they went and voted. They both had driver's licenses and other forms of picture ID. So I don't see how it's racial. It's how is that racial if you ask me to prove that I'm Taylor Haynes?
Exactly.
I do that to cash my checks,
I do it for everything I do.
don't you?
To
Prove
get on
who
the
you
base, I do it. To go to the freaking DMV, I do it. Anywhere I go, I have to show that ID.
prove who you are.
I mean, just to use my debit card, I have to prove who I am.
That's right.
So why do I not have to prove who I am to vote for the people that are going to lead this nation? I don't, I don't understand that.
It's a scam.
It is. It's their way of making sure that they can get the votes they need to win. And that needs to stop. It needs to be who the people vote for, not who they want.
And a lot of people are worried about that now. I got 7.5% as a write-in. I campaigned about 10 weeks last time. And people in Fremont County were just up in arms because they were sure I won the county. Well, I didn't. But it wouldn't have, if it had made a difference in winning the election, we would have gone after it, and we didn't. And sometimes the Lord works in His own way and in His own speed.
He does.
People were not ready for what I would have done. And no matter how I tried, we would have had big time chaos. And now the phone's ringing, the email's humming. There is a core of people out there that want what I bring. And the nice thing is, it's not about me.
It's about the cause.
The cause. It's about the Constitution and their God-given rights. All of your, not, except why do I think I'm the best candidate, none of your questions were about me, how great I am.
Right.
That's not the issue, is it? Do you know the Constitution, Taylor? Do you believe it? Have you got what it takes to enforce it? And can you administrate the state?
That's what I want to know.
Yeah,
That's,
period.
I don't care what your views right now are on abortion or gay marriage. Yeah, there are issues that'll be brought up later, but right now we need the Constitution back in our country.
And that fixes a lot of
It
problems.
does. It does.
It solves a lot of ills that people think are isolated. The problem is we're off the Constitution.
We are. And I got asked a question because I was talking about you yesterday at work, and I got asked by one of my coworkers, well, how does he feel about gay marriage? I don't care. I don't care. It's not something that's going to hurt our nation right now.
No,
It's not oppressive.
we're at a breaking point, or a turning point of being free or not.
Right.
I have very few people that are friends who are gay. And I mean, I can count them on one hand because maybe I have more than that, but they keep their personal lives personal. And none of the people I know care about that. They care about the same things you've talked about this morning. The same things. They have a lifestyle that's not mine. But not everybody wants to be a rancher and a cowboy either.
Right.
And not everybody would cut a live human over and muck around in there with their hands fixing things. So, we're all different.
Right.
So, but we have this Constitution that allows us to do that.
Yes, we do.
And that's what we got to preserve. Now, we can argue our differences when we're safely on the Constitution.
Exactly.
And like I told some Democrats, you need to understand I don't have your viewpoints on certain things like the Second Amendment. That means you and I have to have many conversations because you obviously have viewpoints and hopefully facts that take you to that position that I don't have. And I have a viewpoint, and I have facts, and I have experiences that bring me solidly down where I am. So we need to talk. And they go, well, no, we're not going to have a screaming match here. And I'm not going to tell you you're stupid. I want to know why you think what you think, and I want you to understand what I know that gives me this position.
Right.
That makes me say the Constitution is right, and that's why we had a Second Amendment as it is. But we're not going to come to yelling and screaming because exchange of information is over. Now somebody's got to win. It's not about the facts. It's not about the people I'm trying to win. That you don't want to get there. And so this whole thing, I didn't want to run the first time. But the Constitution was lost from the debate. God-given rights, sovereignty of our state, sovereignty of our individuals was lost. So I got out there in my pickup, running around the state, and the response was amazing. First town hall in some town might be 10 people. Next town hall will be 100. And just like now, we'll have 50, 60 people the first time through, the next time through we'll have a couple, 300. And so and they're talking to their friends and neighbors, and they're going to the website, and I'm emailing answers. And all of the questions are like yours. Very few questions are about self-aggrandizing types. Are you sure you can do this? What gives you the authority kind of questions? Well, I'll quote a Supreme Court decision and say, look, they say it's constitutional for these reasons, and I've said it's constitutional for these reasons, and here's why we can do it. So for those things, I don't need to go to court. I don't need to go to the legislature. It's already been decided.
Right.
If you look in the Wyoming Constitution, the governor's job is very short. It's to faithfully enforce the statutes. And the Constitution is the grand law of the land. My job is not to create jobs. My job is not to do anything about the economy. My job is to faithfully enforce the Constitution, and I know that's what made us great. If I do that, the business community will create jobs. The entrepreneurs will be free to go for it. Get regulations straight, keep taxes low. Because of our minimum wealth, I can do that.
Right.
I'm not making that up. I can keep taxes low. It's worthwhile for people to invest in. It's worthwhile for them to try things in the private sector.
One of the things I was looking at, Wyoming doesn't have a state tax. Texas doesn't have a state tax.
Right.
What states are in the black? What states are doing good? States that don't have a state tax. There's people that don't understand that you don't have to have a tax to profit in a state. And most of the time, you won't profit if you have a tax. You're taking money away from the people. You're taking money away from the economy.
Money that creates money is now in the government, which does not create wealth.
Exactly. They spend. They don't create.
That's right. Somebody said, well, Wyoming's got all kind of money. No, we got mineral wealth that belongs to the people. And that money comes from severance taxes on the minerals. Well, will you raise the severance tax? No. We don't need to raise it. We need to do things different. We need to do things better. We need to collect 100% of our severance tax.
We need to make sure that people get paid what they're supposed to and that the economy stays on its feet.
And if you do that, if you do that, just go by the rules. It fixes a whole lot of ills if you don't have to stick your nose in trying to micromanage. Things right themselves. When people are paid well for what they do a better job. They're not looking for another job.
Exactly.
They do a better job.
I work at the refinery right now. I got hired on there almost a year ago this March. And I'm content and happy where I am. The oil industry pays very well. It's a hard job at times, especially like the day before yesterday. We had an issue that popped up. But I get paid well for it. I get good benefits. And it works. But they're talking about raising the minimum wage right now, bringing it up to $10.10 an hour, I believe is what they're working on for the federal. I don't know how you feel. I'm against raising the minimum wage.
I'm against having the minimum wage.
That's that too.
I'm against that. And so rather than go repeal what we have, we're not raising any minimum wage in Wyoming. And Obama knows that. Because he says, well, just the federal contractors, which affects almost nobody.
Yes.
So we're not raising the minimum wage. And the reason is this. The minimum wage jobs aren't meant to support a family.
Exactly.
They're meant for you to come in high school mostly and college to learn how to say, can I help you, sir? Here's your count your change and serve the public and do a job, show up on time, be presentable and polite and professional, and then you move up in our free enterprise system.
Exactly. I had a rant here a while back saying that the minimum wage was, or the minimum jobs were meant for people coming out of high school, getting ready to go to college, or earning money for college. You're supposed to move up in that job. If you don't want to get paid minimum wage, either find a better paying job, get an education that gets you a better paying job, or move up within that company, as you're supposed to. If you're sitting on the bottom, milking the minimum wage because it is now being increased to pay your salary or pay your bills, then all you're doing is bogging down the system. All you're doing is stopping people from being able to get into those jobs to increase our economy.
Taking away incentive.
Why is our unemployment so high? Because we have a minimum wage that people are comfortable with. They shouldn't be comfortable in the minimum wage.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be walking around with iPhones and brand new cars and getting all these nice things on minimum wage.
That's right.
And
those are things we strive for by working harder.
Exactly.
Contributing more to your employer or finding a better job.
Exactly.
Well, in Wyoming, we're not going to raise the minimum wage. I mean, you publish the federal minimum wage requirement, and everybody has it in their offices. We are, we are a third-party administrator. We run the health plans for companies that self-fund or partially self-fund. So we are an ERISA plan. So our employees know what the federal. We don't have any minimum wage employees. I mean, it's a skilled job even at entry level, and so it pays more than minimum wage, and then they get incentives for production and so forth. Because, and like I explained to them, you guys are the company. Yeah, we're leaders. But you guys serve the customers and do the work. And so you guys share in that with your retirement plan, and then with a percentage bonus depending on profits quarterly. You guys share in that directly so you can see the results of your labors over and above what your base salary is. That's how I think it should work.
Right.
And when you do that, people then think, well, geez, maybe I'll turn the lights out when I leave. Or maybe I will call this customer back after hours now that I have the information to make sure they know what they're supposed to do and that they're taken care of. Well, they're being taken away because the feds want to own the people.
Right.
Welfare, government-sponsored
Food
unemployment, food stamps. See, those things, why should you work? And not everybody's motivated, but you should work if you're going to eat.
The way that they see it is they get the food stamps, which pays for all their food, so their job is for their iPhone, for their nice things.
Isn't that amazing?
It's ridiculous. I was in the military and I almost qualified for food stamps, but did I get them? No. Why? Because I had a decent paying job. That paid for my food. That paid for my bills that I had at the time. I needed to get promoted if I wanted to buy nicer things. When I got out of the Air Force, I got a job working at Delos Distribution Center here in Cheyenne as a security guard. I was making, what was it, $700 every 2 weeks. I mean, I was low on money. I was hurting, and I had to reduce myself. I almost lost my car. I had to reduce what I had to accommodate the paycheck I was getting. I didn't get any government funding.
Right.
I never went in for unemployment when I didn't have a job. I went and looked for a job.
Imagine that.
I didn't go and try and get food stamps. I got a job. When that job wasn't supporting me, I would always keep my eye open for another job. When the refinery had a position open up, I applied. I got moved from a job paying me $700 every 2 weeks to a job paying me almost $2,000 every 2 weeks.
Right.
So now I've got a nice truck. I've got nice things. It's the way the system works. If you don't try and advance yourself through the system, you're going to sit at the bottom, you're going to bog it all down, and then our unemployment rates skyrocket because no one can get a job.
And the feds are fostering that. And the people in the states that go along with that are fostering that. Because then they own the people, and you talked about politicians doing whatever they needed to take power. So now that I'm feeding you, I got power. And if I get control of your health care, I'm feeding you and I got control of your health care, and maybe I'm buying you, helping you with an apartment, I own you. That's a new form of slavery. And people just get furious when I say that. Because
that's the way they do it.
You were free to go either way, and you decided, well, I'll just work my way up here. But people with your drive to join the military and do what you did and put it on the line, those aren't folks we're worried about. We're worried about the folks that thought you did the wrong thing in your peer group. We're worried about those folks. And so they are going to be more difficult to deal with. But you will see me, and I'm not hard-hearted, but you will see me ratchet down welfare, increase what's called workfare, to the point the light comes on. I'm doing the same job as that guy, but because I'm on welfare,
I'm getting paid less.
yeah, maybe now that I know how to do this or run this truck or whatever, I ought to go to a company that'll pay me what that's worth.
Get rid of the food stamps, get rid of the government benefits.
And once that light comes on, then the sky's the limit. And that's what our system is. You're not limited even where you are now. You're on your way. And you do that when you're young. You do that when you're young. That hasn't been taught for a long time in our society in general. Everybody used to teach that to the generation behind it. That's what hasn't been taught. But I have every hope that electing me governor of Wyoming proves that there's enough people in Wyoming that want it fixed that we can fix it.
And if we can get it fixed and get it going right, we'll be the example for the other states.
That's what I think.
I'm pretty sure Texas will be the next one right behind you because Rick Perry is a good governor.
Yeah.
He's got a large state to manage, but for the most part, he's a good governor.
Yeah, much larger population and a larger landmass, more the same problems, but several orders of magnitude more than we have in Wyoming. Plus, he's got an ocean and he's got a border, an international border to deal with, which is not easy. So, I think the Lord positioned Wyoming uniquely with our mineral wealth, small population, that we can get it done here. We can get it done. I firmly believe that's why I was recruited here as a doctor. No idea that I'd ever be in politics. I mean,
it's good to see a doctor running for it instead of a lawyer.
Yeah, lawyers are trained different than we are. And so they do things within the confines of their training. And I had a lawyer stop me at the Capitol the other day, and in our conversation, I made the statement that on the stump, somebody asked me, what about prayer in schools? I says, the First Amendment says you can pray anywhere, anytime, aloud or silent. And that'll go back to the schools, and anybody interfering with that will be prosecuted. And his law firm represents the school district, and he says, you're going to throw us all in jail? Well, no. I didn't even mention lawyers. And I told him what I'd said, and I says, and then he looks at me in the strangest look, he says, well, I don't know anything about the Constitution, Ted. And I says, that's okay. I'm a Constitution scholar, and I'm not a lawyer. So it's not about administrative, admiralty, and maritime law that you guys practice. It's about the God-given rights of the people. And those can work together, and we'll see that. So don't worry, I'm not planning to throw you in jail. Unless you personally interfere with somebody's constitutional right, then you're culpable. You know, the administrative stuff you do in the school district with contracts and all of that stuff, fine. But you don't tell a kid he can't pray. And you don't tell a group of kids they can't pray. We can't tell them they have to pray. But we certainly afford that opportunity under the Constitution, not by my greatness or my power, under the Constitution.
The Founding Fathers.
And so that's where I am. That's why I'm running. And I prayed since my first run that my success would have inspired somebody else with more political inclinations to get after it. They didn't show up.
Well, and unfortunately, they're not doing it in the Senate race either. We've got Thomas Blenheim running for the Senate, which my verdict's still out on him. But other than that,
no, I don't know him.
I don't know him personally. I know a little bit about him. I know he's a Vietnam veteran.
Okay.
I know that he's very constitutional. He's got a lot going on. It's a big plus. He posts a lot of stuff on his Facebook page that kind of puts me on edge. A lot of stuff about like the chemtrails.
And I've been asked about those on the stump, and here's how I handle that. A, I don't have any evidence, and people have brought me lots of literature on it, so maybe this is evidence. I says, stop yourself and think. Maybe the governor of Wyoming.
Do we see any?
Play down there, you okay, Nash?
Yeah, I'm done.
Still working on it?
I'm still working.
And so, what am I going to do about that first? Nothing.
They don't have the problem.
I'm going to fix our constitutional base first. I will get in a room with some like-minded governors, and I'll probably at some point be in a room with Christie, and we won't have much to say with each other. I think that boy's mafia. I grew up in Louisiana, and that boy looks like mafia to me. So that's their issue. But once I have Wyoming where we should go, and see, and when I say my I is with my town hall meetings, explaining things to people, having a legislature pass legislation we need, having the people understand they can stand up, and if somebody from the feds show up in your yard, call me. Call the sheriff first. If the sheriff doesn't respond, I'll deal with that, but we will. See what I mean? So that's where I'm at. Now, when we got that roll, Wyoming's humming, we're free, our economy's humming, other governors will listen because their people will be paying attention.
And slowly we can start filtering down on the smaller things here too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and maybe even faster. Once the light comes on as to what the Constitution means to each individual citizen, and the fact that if I just stand up for my God-given rights, this governor will see that I'm protected. See, that empowers all kind of people to do things. See, it doesn't have to be me helping everybody fix everything. They have to know that the Constitution says I can do this. And once I start with that, people will start to research Constitution case law. The Supreme Court has said I can do it. So how can you, because you're a city policeman, tell me I can't do it? But it has to come from the top. Then a lot of things get fixed without ever coming to the attention of the government. And that's the point about the class for the sheriffs and the president of each county commission. Those are the folks I want in that class. If I can get the leadership of the legislature to come, the president of the Senate, Speaker of the House, and any other legislators that want to come, it's not going to be closed, then we can start everybody off on my inauguration day on the same page.
Okay.
That's my plan.
Sounds good.
And so I'm worried about chemtrails too, but what am I going to do about nothing? I'm not doing anything about that. So I'm going to fix what I can where I live. Eventually, if I'm the governor, maybe I can find out that there's something to what they're talking about. If that's the case, then I can bring that to other governors in a scientific manner so that they can see it. Once they see the problem, then we can deal with it. But that's not where I'm going to start.
Now we need to start with the Constitution.
That's right. That's right. I have to. Eventually.
This is good. I'll finish it up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and pause this one if it's still recording. Yep.